Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books, and as you heard in this Reading the Riff, I'm going to show you how to play Nirvana's Come As You Are. Now this song is easily one of the 3 biggest songs from Nirvana's biggest album, Nevermind, which came out in September of 1991. The other 2 songs being, of course, Smells Like Teen Spirit and Lithium. But there's really not a bad song on the whole album. Every song is fantastic, in my opinion. I actually remember watching the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit when it first came out in the September of 1991. At the time, I had no idea it was a new video. I just happened to glance up when they started playing it, and I was like, wow, this sounds really good. It sounded so different from everything else that was popular at the time. So it really caught a lot of people's attention, and this album took off. And the last I read, they had sold somewhere around 30 million copies. So it's a huge album, and this is one of the top songs on that album. See, during that time period, the September of 1991, it just so happened I was starting to learn how to play guitar. I had taken my first lesson a few weeks before, and I was learning classical guitar. So learning any songs from this album seemed like a huge challenge. I had no idea how to even begin. So a couple years later, after I had learned a bunch of stuff on guitar, I finally found a book that showed me how to do it. And I just took off from there and just kind of played it over and over again. And it turned out it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And the song itself is kind of cool because it's about individuality. It's about people saying, just come as you are. Don't worry about what other people think, which was a big theme in popular culture in the 90s, this sense of individuality, of finding who you are and being your authentic self. All right, so enough of that stuff. Let's get into playing it. So the first thing I want to mention is, if you haven't already, download the PDF that comes with this video. It'll show you several different ways of playing this riff. At the beginning of the video, you saw me doing it in the traditional manner, which we'll talk about in a second. Also, too, there's 2 versions of each type that I'll show you. One will have the tab and one won't, so that way you can practice just playing the tune, get an idea of how it goes, or you can test yourself by reading the notation that's on the paper. So the first thing that you need to do in order to play it as it sounds on the album is tune down every string a whole step. So I've already done that on the Les Paul here. And so the last string, of course, is tuned down to D, which sounds like that. The next one is G. The next one is C. And really, that's all you need to tune down, because you don't play the higher strings. But just to kind of balance out the sound, to tune the rest of it down, you would tune the 3rd string to F, the 2nd string to A, and then finally the 1st string down to D. So once you have that tuned down, you'll be able to play the first version that you'll see in the PDF. So now that we've got that, let's take a look. In the PDF, that first version, we have to tune down, which means we are going lower than any of the notes found in the Missing Method for Guitar series, because that assumes you're in standard tuning. So that D, that new note, sounds like that, is actually 4 full ledger lines down. So it starts to get a little tough reading that low. In fact, if you were reading it on piano, they would just throw that in bass clef, because that's really where it is. But for now, we're just going to read it in treble clef, traditional guitar music, and we have 4 ledger lines down. Now the song also, at the very beginning, contains pickup notes. So we start on the 2nd half of beat 3, so and then play 4 and. So to do that on the guitar, you want to actually pick the first note as an upstroke with your pick. Then the second one, which is at the 1st fret, would be down, and then the 3rd note would be up again. So it gives you this sense of forward motion. And then by the time you get to the first note of the first full measure, it has a solid downbeat. So you get this feeling of there's the one, there's where the tune really starts. So here we go. I'm going to play through the whole example in the traditional way that Nirvana plays it on the album. So here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. All right, and there you go. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that the sound of it has this wobbly, wavy, almost underwater-like sound, and that is called flanger. So I've already set up my amp, which is kind of out of camera shot here, to include that sound. I just kind of dialed it in, and so it gives you that wavy type of sound. If I dial that out, so I'll do that real quick here. Here it is without the flanger. You can hear it still sounds good, but doesn't sound quite like it does on the album. All right, I'm gonna go back and turn that back on. So now we're in this lowered tuning. We can play it exactly like Nirvana did it, but there are other ways of going about reading this riff. So let's say you're in standard tuning, so you've learned the notes that are in the Missing Method for Guitar books or some other method book, and you want to just read it, and you don't want to have to bother changing tunings, because one of the problems with changing tunings all the time is then you're constantly checking your tuning pretty much after every song to make sure that your guitar still sounds good. So what I'm going to do is switch guitars to a standard tuning guitar and then show you two other ways that you can read this riff. All right, so now I've got this G&L Strat. It's got the single coil pickup. It's closer to the actual sound that were used on the recording, so it'll sound a little bit more like what you're used to hearing. Now this is in standard tuning, so that means it's just E right through like you're normally tuning it. So there's two ways we can do this. One is to simply change keys. So we're playing it the same way Nirvana played it, but it's going to be in a new key. It won't be as low. So we're actually moving the whole song up a whole step. So to do that, so you simply can play the tab as you see it in the traditional way, and it'll sound exactly right. Or you can read through the notes that are found in the PDF to kind of test your note reading. So here's what it sounds like when you're playing it in standard tuning. Here. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, so you can hear it sounds like the song, it's just not as low. It won't match the recording. If you want to stay in standard tuning and still play it at pitch, there is a way you can do that, and that is the third part of the PDF. So what you're going to do is actually take what we did in the first version where we tuned the strings down and play it up an octave. So if you take a look at the third page of the PDF, it shows you in notation and in tab how you would play the riff to Come As You Are up an octave. So instead of that low D, which we tuned down to, we're simply moving it to the fourth string D. So that's our starting point. So our notes are going to be the same, D, D, E flat, E, or D sharp if you want to call it that. And there you go, you can hear it still sounds like the song, but it's up an octave. So that means we're playing everything on just strings 4 and 3 rather than the lower two strings like you did with the other two examples. All right, now throughout that song, that is the heart of the song. You hear that riff over and over again. There are some other parts that we're not going to go over today. They're all power chords and things like that that fill out the rest of the song. But that's kind of not the point of reading the riff. So enjoy that, have fun playing it 3 different ways on the guitar. If you have more than one guitar, it's always fun to just tune one down so you have one that you can always play lower and get those notes sounding exactly like they are on the recording. All right, so take your time with it or hurry up. I guess the choice is yours. All right, I had to say that. I mean, it's part of the song, right? I hope you enjoyed this edition of Reading the Riff. We have other ones that you can check out that show you how to read the notation that make up popular guitar riffs. Also, too, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and head over to our website, themissingmethod.com. Sign up for our newsletter, and each month you'll be informed on what videos we're putting out, what books we're putting out, and anything else going on with The Missing Method. I'll see you in the next video.